family-owned shop in Loganville, Soesby's Garage for all your automotive repair needs. We service all makes and models, foreign and domestic. We repair engines, alternators, brakes, alignments, AC systems, and more, using certified technicians with over 90 years of combined experience. We also offer same-day service for some repairs. Soesby's Garage, 200 Bay Creek Road in Loganville. Dependable, honest, and fair. Look us up on Google or Facebook. We'll take good care of you.
Broadcasting live from the Subaru of Gwinnett studio inside the Sonesta Gwinnett Place Atlanta Hotel. It's time for Case in Point, presented by Paradigm Security Services. We are the cornerstone of security in the Southeast.
Hey everybody, welcome to Case in Point, presented by Paradigm Security Services. I'm your host, Rick Strawn, the president of Paradigm Security Services. We're excited to be with you today on Business RadioX. We're broadcasting live from the Subaru of Gwinnett studio, located in the beautiful Sonesta Gwinnett Place Atlanta Hotel in Duluth, Georgia. In addition to Paradigm Security, this show is also brought to you by Soesby's Garage, as you just heard, and also every other week between my shows, the Manna Scholarship Fund. Check out Dr. Jeannie Burnett. On every show, we feature businesses and organizations in the Atlanta area, especially those that serve Gwinnett County, as well as the people. While all businesses and have security concerns, not all are about physical security, and we'll touch on that and other related aspects of security through the course of our shows. You know, today we have a lot of things going on. Elections are coming up. There's just a lot of things going on in our county here in Gwinnett and really around the state. And one of the things that we try to do as we move through this season is to have some of the people that want to have your vote, want to go on through the politics thing and get in there and work for you. And we like to kind of give you an idea of what some of those issues are, where they stand, and how that goes. So with that in mind, I want to welcome Byron Gatewood to the show today. Brian, thanks for coming on.
Thank you for having me. And just real quick, everybody does it. It's Byron.
What did I say?
You said Brian. Everyone.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm looking at it.
My mom does it. It's okay.
Yeah, I'm looking at it and seeing Byron and said Brian. It's Byron Gatewood.
Yes, sir.
My apologies. And I know that. It was a screw up on my part. He's running for the 6th District Congressional seat here in Georgia. And, you know, that is a pretty good size area on the 6th District, and especially with the redos of the districts. I like to always start out with, you know, just in a kind of a nutshell synopsis. Who is Byron Gatewood? I almost did it again.
You almost did it again. Yeah, no, it's very common. Everybody does it. Don't sweat it, please. I am a guy from a little town who worked hard and got somewhere. You know, I to introduce myself, probably best I have to go back 20 years to a moment where, you know, that I think changed a lot of lives forever. September 11th, 2001, you know, we all know where we were that day. That was a turning point in our nation's history. But for me as an individual, it was really that, you know, that crystallizing moment where I became an adult. You know, I was kind of still a kid right up to that point, and then something happened that changed the course of my life. And I took that anger and that rage that I felt after seeing us attacked, and I enlisted in the National Guard at the time because I was still in college, and, you know, wasn't ready, I thought, to be a full-time soldier. Little did I know that I was about to be a full-time soldier.
It has a way of surprising you with the Guard, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. It does, especially after, you know, they mobilized the whole Guard for a national campaign like that to go beat the Taliban. But that was really where I grew up, was in Afghanistan. And, you know, I was lucky enough to come home. A lot of guys and girls didn't get the opportunity to come back. And came back, you know, got back into school, commissioned onto active duty. And then my wife and I, you know, spent several years on active duty building a family, one duty station at a time, going, you know, from Virginia to Arizona to Kansas and all around the U.S. Ultimately spent about 4 years in Germany, where I did a lot of good work in the intelligence field in Eastern Europe and Israel. We'll talk probably some about that in the course of our conversation. And then I, got out of the active service, went and got my MBA at Cornell, and have gone into business for myself. I live in East Cobb, where we're raising a family. I've got 4 kids. We just added number 4 via adoption. And I'm a biblical conservative, raising a family along those lines. That's how I feel my policy should be crafted. As a member of Congress, those are the politicians I tend to vote for and support generally, is people I feel that live up to a certain moral code. And that's how I run my business, how I run my family. That's who I am.
Well, it requires a lot. And you mentioned part about being a small business owner. Mm-hmm. And in today's atmosphere, I can tell you as a small business owner myself, getting people to work, getting people once they get to work, just getting them to come in and come through our academy that we have and actually go out and get in patrol and do the job. It's a challenge, and it's something that just does not. It's not getting a lot better. In fact, I'm not sure it's getting any better. It may improve. I can tell you after the next 2-3 weeks, because it looks like there may be a little bit of movement in it.
Right.
But that's something that you're going to have to work with, to deal with when you get in the position. If you're lucky enough to be elected, that's going to have to be dealt with. Kind of, how do you look at that particular facet of trying to get people back to work, which is important to Georgia?
It's hugely important to Georgia. It's important to Georgians, one of the jobs that I have right now is I help run and I work with a nonprofit that creates jobs for adults in the autism spectrum.
Awesome.
And we partner. It's really cool, actually. I'm really proud of it.
I've got a grandson that's autistic.
And autism at this point touches every family.
Absolutely.
Everybody has a cousin or an uncle or a nephew or something that we've all been touched by autism. And so what we do is we partner with corporate clients, and we do data work. This is a population of people who frequently kind of the stereotype diagnosis is that affinity for repetitive task, attention to detail, that that comfort level with technology, and that makes them good candidates for data work, data management, and things like that. So what we do is partner with corporate clients, and we do data management work that would otherwise get farmed out overseas. Mm-hmm. And we've created this environment where folks who are generally overlooked in the labor market. This is a population that's vastly underemployed, vastly unemployed, despite having some marketable skills.
Vastly underrated.
And yeah, very much so, yes, sir. And we've created an environment where they can thrive, where they can grow professionally, develop the soft skills, develop the hard skills, and get good work done, rewarding work, and quality of life improvement. But for a couple of years now, we've had an incentive structure that has sent this population and everyone else at home and paid people to stay home, or scared people into staying home. And this is policy making and fear mongering that's in direct conflict with human flourishing.
Absolutely.
Not just for this population, maybe especially for this population, but it's good for everyone to be out, everyone to be working. You need
that social interaction.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And we're creatures who were designed to go out and do good work. Whether it's a universal basic income argument or whatever it is, like, this is not good policy. Like, we need to go create and do things for ourselves.
Well, we've got to have that, like I say, that personal interaction, especially important for kids growing up, to learn how to interact, how to interface with kids their own age, with older and younger kids. And I know from it being associated with someone that has the autism, and he's on the high intellect level of autistic, he has his issues. He's working to control them and all that, and learning. It's come with maturity, but it's something that they deal with every day. And if they don't have that interaction, they don't learn how to deal with it. Tell us, you've told me a little bit about your military experience. Can you tell me how that basically prepared you to be an effective member of Congress?
Yeah, it's a great question. Baseline, it's about leadership. It's about putting people in situations to make the hard decision. And as a voter, for me, and I would hope this would be the case with other voters, it's putting people in office who you can be reasonably confident will rise to that occasion, and speak up and take the hard right over the easy wrong, and step into the void, and get things done. I think easy, for instance, there is what it takes to send our young people to go serve and fight and die on foreign soil. And after 20 years, almost 20 years in the U.S. Army in some capacity or another, I'm still in, by the way, in the reserves.
Thank you for your service.
I appreciate that. But after 20 years, I think I'm equipped to approach that decision with a proper respect for the gravity of what it means. I'm 80% disabled from the VA. I know what it means to come back with some scars, inside and outside, and before it doesn't mean it's never the right answer. Sometimes we do have to do that. We've got a standing army for a reason, but that's not something you just run into willy-nilly without proper respect for the service members, the families, and what it means to put people in harm's way.
Put a lot of thought into it before you move, unlike some things that are going on.
And one of the things that's required to put proper consideration there is understanding the threats we face, and I've spent my career as an Army intelligence officer looking at those threats. I've studied China closely at the academic level. Actually, part of my master's thesis was on the rise of the Chinese threat. I've studied Russia closely in my intelligence work, in the intelligence field. And, in that confluence of, academic experience and real world, intelligence on the ground experience, I think makes me uniquely qualified to weigh those considerations closely, and at this point, I think every Republican running for office everywhere is talking about border security. You got school board candidates talking about border security because it's topical and it's important to folks. But how many of those candidates have ever worked border security? I have, and it didn't happen to be our southern border. It was actually a border between Turkey and Syria. That's a little stickier.
That's fairly volatile.
Yeah. And, but I've got a pretty good understanding of, what it takes from a tiered security strata to secure that type of border.
Well, I know from being in law enforcement and being in the security field now, the primary thing that you got to start with is a threat assessment. Mm-hmm. And if you can't get a full, logical, in-place threat assessment, then you're starting from behind the eight ball to start with.
Yep.
And which is kind of what I've seen experienced in the Afghanistan. There was not a full threat assessment done, and if there was, it sure wasn't anything paid attention to it.
Yeah, well, and that's the tragedy, is that there was a risk assessment, there was a threat assessment. We did understand what the Taliban was going to do, and people were trying to get heard, and
nobody was listening.
The guy at the top wasn't.
At least the main guy wasn't. And that's something. I mean, you've been over there, so give me your thoughts on what happened with Afghanistan as far as from both a citizen and also as a soldier.
Yeah, so
combine the two as one, it's the same.
Yeah, and that's an important thing that you said there. There's not a clear distinction for me between citizen and soldier, because I've been both my entire adult life, and watching us throw away the good work that we did. We after 9/11, after we were attacked, we secured the area. We locked down the Taliban. There was the Taliban is an ideology. It's not just a group of people. You're never going to exterminate that any more than we can ever exterminate racism or anti-Semitism or anything else. Like, you're never going to completely crush a thing like that. But we shut them down, and we were safe for 20 years. The world was safe for 20 years. Before we just decided to kind of punt on it and sell them out. Little girls went to school. Terrorist attacks were not planned in Afghanistan for 20 years. And so to watch us just give that away over the course of about a week, it seemed like, and get nothing in return. We were instantly less safe. And as an intelligence professional I've been a little closer to this than the average bear, I know how much less safe we are. And it's a lot less safe.
Oh, absolutely.
And then from a power projection standpoint, knowing that China's going to swoop right in because they don't care about the human rights violations. They don't care about any of that. And so, regionally, we project less power. But then beyond that, looking at our other relationships, being a part of building those relationships on the ground in Afghanistan and knowing that we sold those folks out, to die. But we've got, there are 30 countries in NATO. That's 29 partners who've got to be doing a hard look at their relationship with the United States, saying, well, will the U.S. keep their word? Whether it's, our oldest allies like Great Britain or France, or some of the former Eastern Bloc countries like Latvia, Lithuania, who depend on us. And frankly, who we depend on, they don't know if they can count on us to keep our word. Israel, our most important ally in a tremendously volatile region. And I've done a lot of work with Israel. The folks in the IDF have to be given their relationship with the U.S. a hard look. Can we count on these guys? And right now, I don't think they can.
Well, how can some of those ideas, concerns, everything be transferred down to the local area and the stuff that you're going to have to do as a local congressman? Mm-hmm. How do some of the stuff that you learned in that area going to help you in that particular area on a local level?
Yeah, a lot of it's going to be driving policy, how we draw up foreign policy, how we approach the countries that we need. And to be frank, I just listed, our allies. Mm-hmm. Every country in the world needs to understand that the U.S. keeps its word. Our adversaries need to understand that the U.S. keeps its word. That they can only push so far because we will do what we say we're going to do. And some of that is policymaking in the houses of Congress. Some of that's holding the executive branch accountable, because ultimately those matters of state, that's all of that runs through the DOD and all that comes up through the commander-in-chief. And we've seen what massive failures from the commander-in-chief can lead to. But it's about accountability and being, whether it's in policymaking or being the person on TV raising the alarm. The president isn't doing what he's supposed to do, which is the case currently.
Well, the pandemic has hit. We'll move on to a little bit different here. Mm-hmm. The pandemic has hit everybody hard in every facet of life, mm-hmm. but particularly in the business area. Now, you're in business. I'm sure you were affected as well. What can we do on a local basis to help influence us getting back into the normal mm-hmm. as a Georgia congressman?
That's really, yeah. So, my wife and I own a couple of small businesses, and we own a gym and we own a travel agency. And I'm sure you and I
both affected greatly.
I'm sure you and I could sit here long enough to come up with an industry that was more impacted than fitness centers and travel and hospitality.
It'd take a while,
but it would take a minute. and some of that was inevitable. There was a worldwide pandemic. People were afraid. There were reasons that, reasonable restrictions, all of that. But so much has been driven on government mandates and overreach and these blanket mandates that applied to all businesses or mm-hmm. all industries, irrespective of how they might affect different things, different ways. And then the misinformation and the constant contradictions from either government mouthpieces or their counterparts in the mainstream media. And it's been so damaging. 2 years ago, February of 2020, if you look at the small business landscape then to now, over a third, 34% of small businesses are shuttered in mm-hmm. America since then. How many careers is that? How many life savings is that? How many jobs are just gone, forever based on this whole thing? And we'll never be able to really sort out the data and know how much of that was really necessary, but a lot of it wasn't, And so getting things back to local control, and this is for a member of the federal government, the seat that I'm running for, the job there is getting that control wresting that control away from the Faucis and the federal level organizations and getting that down to the state and the local level where communities can make decisions on what's best for communities. Because you can't run rural Georgia like Manhattan or DC. They're just not the same area. They're not subject to the same risks. They're just too different. And to have, the head of the CDC or Anthony Fauci come out, make blanket statements that are supposed to apply to every American in every situation, that's just not smart.
Well, we just had information, from the reviews and stuff come out that what was it, 0.02 or 0.2% of the fatalities, it would have been changed if we hadn't done a complete lockdown.
Right.
So it was such infinitesimal. Now, I agree that we did not know that in the beginning. We had to do what we had to do and it was based on recommendations from Fauci, which we all know have been terrible from the beginning. But at least we know now, hindsight's wonderful. But, from a level of being a U.S. congressman, you're going to have input on the directions in which this goes. So hopefully you can help to assist to get us out of this fear-based stuff. Who is a current legislator on the federal or state levels that you would like to emulate the style or policy and priorities of, if in fact you want to emulate anyone?
Yeah, I'm glad you phrased it like that. Yeah, I'm glad you phrased it like that, because I got to be me. I'm a lot of personality. I got a lot of energy, and I think based on some of the stuff we've talked about, I'm going to bring a lot of experience and some earned expertise to the seat. And so, the idea of trying to fall into the mold of another person is just not my style. And right now, everybody in Congress on both sides are held completely hostage by leadership, and I want to break that stranglehold on the power and represent the people of Georgia 6. I'm going to have, the way I see it, about 800,000 bosses when I'm in Congress, and none of them are a party leader. None of them are, the speaker. My 800,000 bosses live, in Forsyth and Dawson and Cherokee and Cobb and North Fulton. And those are the people that I'm accountable to. So going out of my way to emulate somebody else or to try to be like somebody else when what I want to do is represent the people I represent, that feels like the most genuine way to approach this.
That's a good answer, because, I think there's too many people nowadays I really think would have answered that more of a, well, I like the way this guy does it, and, I want to be like him. And I don't think there's a single person in office right now that we need to emulate. I think we need to have some people in there that's fresh blood. Yeah. People in there with fresh ideas.
Yeah. And Congress doesn't do anything right now. Exactly. We hadn't passed a budget in 20 years. We pass massive spending bills. Nobody's putting thought into legislation. And if the legislature doesn't legislate, then our three branches of government are rendered kind of incompetent there. And so, we've got to get back to basics and just get back to civics class.
I'd like to see us get back to trying to balance a budget. We're required to do it on a personal basis. Yep. So,
wouldn't that be amazing?
As a business, if I don't balance a budget in some way, we're out of business. Well, the federal government's going to eventually get out of business if we don't get a balanced budget going. And I'd love to see some people do that. Once elected, if you could hypothetically only focus on one issue, and that's just hypothetically, because I know there's a lot of them that you're interested in, what would that issue be?
I do have a lot of priorities and a lot of things that I think are important for us to focus on. But for me personally, and I touched on it earlier, I'm a biblical conservative. That's who I am. And so for me, it's the life issue. If I could pick one thing to get through, it would be that issue of the sanctity of life. It's deeply personal to me. It's not a talking point. It's not a political point to score. I know it's, I'm running as a Republican. It's the right answer, but it's theological, and it's driven by something deeper. My pro-life story starts at the very beginning. I was born to a scared, poor teenage mom in a bad relationship, and she kept me, and gave me a chance. And that's a big deal. I can't overstate that really. And she worked hard and created a good life for me. The man who eventually married us was adamant about adopting me. He didn't want to be a stepdad. He wanted to be a dad, and he adopted me. He himself was adopted, and adoption continues to be part of my story and my family now. We brought home baby number 4. It was our first adoption, though, from India a couple of months ago.
It's awesome.
And so, so the life issue and overturning Roe is a beautiful first step, but it's only a first step to the journey to be a life-affirming culture.
Awesome. Well, and that is important to so many people right now. One thing I would like to ask you also, in addition to that, is, one of the big issues right now is our immigration, illegal immigration. I am absolutely on board with legal immigration. I think it's what made our country. But illegal immigration is killing us.
Indeed.
And right now I read something earlier before the show of a tremendous increase in the pandemic, the COVID COVID sicknesses within the immigration, illegal immigration facilities and camps. What's your position on that? I know your position, but how would you deal with it?
Well, the first thing we talked about a little bit already is border security. Right now we don't have a border policy. And by not having a border policy, that's the border policy.
That is a problem.
And that's, and so whether it's completing structure and walls and fences and physical obstructions to getting over, but that's only part of a solution. It's a tiered multi-level solution that involves everything from, automated drones to agents on horseback. It's border security is an active engagement. That's almost a front to a war zone, especially in a situation where we've got what we've got thanks to the Biden policies. And of course they're bringing over COVID. This is an unregulated set of people who end up in close quarters, who end up in unsafe conditions.
And unregulated conditions.
Yeah. And so they're bringing over COVID. They're bringing over a lot worse than COVID.
Oh, yeah.
And so yeah, it's a situation that's got to end. Attention has to be brought to it. And we need people creating policy there who know what they're doing. Because right now we don't have it.
We need strong people and strong personalities that can put up and stand up against some of these people that are in charge and have not done anything, aren't doing anything besides talk. And right now we have a lot of talk, just no action. Would you say Joe Biden has been effective in any area of his presidency so far? And kind of second on that, what issues would you see yourself working with him on?
You know what? I would like to be that bipartisan guy who can point out and really ferret out the thing that Joe Biden has done well. Unfortunately, that he's not given me the opportunity. He's done nothing well.
It's called a brain teaser.
Yeah, it's been abject failure from front to back. If we look at foreign policy, we can start in Afghanistan, but we talked about that. But then our adversaries are emboldened. China is emboldened. North Korea is launching missiles toward Japan.
Right and left.
We're back in a situation where Russia's about to slice off another little piece of Ukraine because they can. And so on down the line. The border's a travesty. Internally, you're probably saving for retirement, but you're further away from it than you were a year ago.
Absolutely.
Because all of your money is worth 7 to 10% less, people at every stage of life, whether it's, getting close to retirement, sending kids to school, building a house, starting a business, whatever, your savings are worth less. Everything about this Biden administration, he was going to come in and shut down the virus. What a of all the quotes that haven't aged well, it's just been more fear-mongering and more of the same.
That was a point to get elected by.
Absolutely.
And, there's no way in the world that was ever going to happen.
No. But so no. Joe Biden has been an abject failure a year in. It's been maybe the worst first year any president has had since, Lincoln's first year was pretty bad. The Civil War started. That was a tough run. But other than that, and all of Joe Biden's stuff has been self-inflicted. Afghanistan was stable. The border was so stable. The COVID was under control. The economy was on the rebound. So many things were going so well. And A year
All he
ago.
had to do was nothing, and he'd have done well.
Which honestly, we could have expected him to do nothing. That's how he ran. He did nothing. And so, but the fact that he got in and rolled up his sleeves and immediately just went to work, just making a mess.
Yep.
So no, and, sadly, unfortunately, there's not a thing I can point to and say, oh, President Biden's doing a great job in this, and I'd love to help him continue. Because no, it's just not there. It goes on and on. Labor force participation is down. Everything is down. Race relations are at probably a 50-year low in this country, and that's on the back of this this critical race theory agenda that the left is pushing. That's pervasive through our schools and our corporations and everything at this point. And it's toxic. It's poisonous. It's racist. It's divisive, and it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be all of those things. It's not a unifying theology, which is basically what it is. Yeah. Ideology is what I meant to say there. But, and that speaks to crime, because when you make everything, when you view the world through this lens of equity over safety, and we make these issues about crime and behavior, about social justice and different things like that, and we vilify police and we make policing illegal, the defund the police just basically turned into, well, let's just make it impossible to police. Yeah. All of that in the name of social justice and racial reconciliation or something, but you don't get that. If you go to a high crime area and you make it harder to police, you don't get less crime, you get more crime. And you see places like the super woke cities like San Francisco that have basically tried to decriminalize what they call petty crime. Mm-hmm. Well, you get more. You get more of all kinds of crime. So murder's up, shoplifting's up, everything's kind of a disaster.
That's kind of the broken window theory.
Yeah, it is. It's very much the broken window policing theory. And all of that's, that's locally driven stuff, but it's all Democrat mayors. It's all Democrat leadership, and it's all top-down driven from Joe Biden and his party. Yeah,
the policing is getting harder and harder. I mean, that 25 years that I was in it is totally different than what it is now. Mm-hmm. I don't recommend young people go into policing, and as much as it was a great career for me, I'm glad I did it. I wouldn't go back and do it now.
Yeah, the respect's not there. You've got to constantly.
Well, the support's not there.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Without that support and without the people, when people do bad things, they need to be separated from society as far as, if they can be rehabilitated, awesome. Mm-hmm. But they've got to stay in jail to get rehabilitated. You can't just put them all up in a cushy apartment and say, you're free to go and do whatever you want to do, because it has no effects. Some people are just bad people.
Some people are just bad people, but a lot.
Not all of them.
But some people, at an 18-year-old who makes a mistake needs to pay consequences and be, like you said, rehabilitated.
Be given that second chance.
Or at 20 and 25, it escalates. It doesn't get better. It gets worse without mitigation and without remediation, and making it harder for police and law enforcement and that process to work. Cities that aren't prosecuting that are like no longer prosecuting nonviolent crimes. Well, guess what? You're going to see an uptick in eventually is violent crimes.
Absolutely. It does escalate. It's a training ground.
Yeah.
The more it happens, we've got people with multiple arrests and for serious offenses that are just turned loose, and they're going out here and then they're committing murder.
Yeah.
And you can say no, that's not how. Yeah, it is what's
documented.
Happening.
Yeah.
So hopefully, should you be lucky enough to be elected here, hopefully you'll be able to do something about that and at least make your voice heard and try and get things turned around in those areas. If somebody wanted to get a hold of you, Byron, and I got it right. If somebody wanted to get a hold of you and talk to you about coming on to your program, helping you out, running, knocking doorbells, and all that kind of stuff, how would they get in touch with you and become a part of your campaign?
Yeah, thank you for teeing that up for me. Because we do need volunteers, we need folks on the phones, we need folks pounding on doors for us, and the website's gatewoodforgeorgia.com. It's Gatewood, just like it sounds, for Georgia. all spelled out there, and you can sign up to volunteer there. You can donate online there, and we're building something. So it's really growing. It's a lot of fun, and we're really optimistic about what we're going to be able to do in this race, and then ultimately in the seat.
Well, Byron, I wish you a lot of luck. There's a lot of stuff going on in this county, a lot of stuff going on in the United States. Mm-hmm. We've got to have some strong people that are willing to get out there and fight. And the more it gets there, the more it looks like there's going to be what they call a red wave. But I wouldn't bet on anything right now.
Yep.
So the best I can say is on each individual is good luck.
Oh, I appreciate that. Yeah, and we definitely don't win until we win. You know that the media is going to give they're going to give every Democrat every second chance, every mulligan. They're going to give them all the top cover that they can. So I appreciate this opportunity in the media to come out and spread the good word there. But yeah, we definitely have to be vigilant. We've got to raise money. We've got to stay in front of this thing, because Democrats are definitely they have an upper hand.
Yeah, they do. They've got the media behind them 100%. Well, thank you for joining us on Case in Point, presented by Paradigm Security Services and in part by Soulsby's Garage and the Manna Scholarship Fund. Be sure to join us for the live broadcast every other Wednesday at 11:30 a.m. here on Business RadioX. If you miss the live broadcast, no worries. You can enjoy the show anytime by visiting businessradiox.com, selecting the Gwinnett Studio, and then, of course, clicking on Case in Point. This program is also available on iTunes, iHeart, Spotify, and I'll say that again, Spotify, or wherever you enjoy your favorite podcasts. Be sure to subscribe to Case in Point, and so you don't miss any of our future episodes. Thank you to my guest, Byron Gatewood, and I appreciate you coming on, and Miss Amanda for producing the show. I'm Rick Strawn, and remember, at Paradigm Security Services, we cover more than just your assets.